What's up, y'all? It's Ben Visser, the Heartland Maker here. Today we're going to be making this valet tray. This is a great project to get rid of all your scraps and offcuts. You can use whatever wood you have on hand and you can customize the size and shape of it to fit whatever you need it to hold. I'm making this one for my sister so she can give it as a present to her husband for Father's Day. And I'm making it out of maple and white oak. They have a lot of white oak in the area that this is going to go, so it should tie in nicely to what they already have. And what you're seeing now is me setting up the table saw to cut a rabbet along the perimeter of the maple base. And that rabbet's going to allow the white oak edge to seat in there and create an edge for the tray so stuff won't just roll out or anything like that. There are a few different ways you could create a rabbet in your workpiece. The other way would be to use a router table. But since I'm using a table saw, I'm going to walk you through this method. I'm using a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch rabbet on the edge of my workpiece. And to set that up on your table saw, you're going to want to put your fence an 1/8 inch away from the blade because the blade is an 1/8 inch. So that's going to give you that 1/4 inch. And then you're going to want to set your blade to 1/4 inch height, which you saw me do earlier with the speed square. And then as you saw, you run it through flat. When you get all four sides run through, then you're going to flip it vertically, and that's going to create a nice even rabbet along the edge, as you can see here. Once I got done cutting all the rabbets, I could then move on to cutting the 1/4 inch strips of white oak I'm going to need to create the perimeter of this piece. The piece of white oak I have isn't actually long enough to span the long length of the maple base that it's going to go on. So I'm going to get a little bit creative with how I made sure the white oak got to be long enough, but I'll show that a little bit later on in the video. And here's my grand solution to make the white oak long enough. All I'm doing is cutting a 45 on each of the two pieces, and they're going to mate together, and then I'm going to put 45 miters on the corners, and it should look good. Remember when I mentioned the router table earlier? Well, now we're going to use it to cut a dado through the piece. And if you're wondering what the difference is between a dado and a rabbet, just know they're essentially the same thing, but the easiest way I can say it is a rabbet goes around a piece and a dado goes through a piece. So here I am setting the router bit to the exact height that the rabbet was already set at. So my dado cuts are the exact same height as my rabbets. This dado cut is going to make the main pockets of the valet tray, and then this one is going to make the subdivision of those pockets. So we should end up with 3 main pockets, but 2 of those pockets are going to be subdivided up into 2 more pockets. So in total we're going to have 5 pockets. And just like before, we're going to use the strips of white oak that we cut before as our dividers. I would say I'm generally pretty good at math, but the problem with math in woodworking is that it's almost always wrong. So you can have your parts list and your cut list and all of that, but once you start cutting, you're going to get off a little 1/16 of an inch here and a 32nd of an inch there, and it's going to build up over time. So then when you get time for your final cut, it's different than what the listed is. So what I like to do is I like to dry fit, as you saw there, and then use that as my measurement for what I need to cut. That's why I don't really like working with plans, as I mentioned in my first video I made. It's just much easier for me to measure and cut as I go, and that gets me some pretty good results. As you can see here, everything is a nice snug fit, and it's going to fit together and go together wonderfully. Once I was happy with how everything fit together during the dry assembly, I could throw some glue down in the dados and then start inserting the middle center pocket dividers, and then I'd get to the outside perimeter edge later. One of the absolute best woodworking tricks I've come across is taking a straw and cutting a 45-degree angle off the tip, and then using that straw to run along any inside corners of your piece to get excess glue out. It gets it perfectly. That way you don't have to break out a chisel later once the glue dries and risk damaging your piece. It's just a quick, easy way, and it does a great job. Glue up tip number 2 for this video is to use wood glue and CA glue when the piece you're working on won't let you use a clamp as well as you would like. So you're going to want to dot the wood glue as you saw, and then come back and in between the dots put CA glue. And what that's going to do is you're going to spray your piece that you're going to attach to that with activator, and that's going to make the CA glue bond instantly. And over time, as the wood glue dries, that's what's going to give it the strength, and the activator won't mess with the wood glue at all, and it'll give a nice long permanent bond for when a clamp just isn't the right thing for the situation. The risk here is you really only have one shot at this. As soon as the CA glue hits the contact of the activator, it's bonded permanently, and you're going to see that here. I'm going to lift the whole piece up by the part that I just stuck on there literally seconds ago. Once everything was assembled and in its proper place, I could take the piece over to the belt sander and smooth out any of the edges just in case something didn't line up quite perfectly. And you're going to see that here. It created a nice, even, smooth edge that's going to look really good. I didn't intend for this project to become a tips and tricks video, but this is another really good tip and another really good trick. If you ever have any gaps, and if you use mitered corners, you're going to have gaps. No matter how good you think your 45 is set up, probably going to have gaps. So to fill those gaps, the best way to do it is to use wood glue and the sawdust that you have from your project. That's going to create a perfect color match. You're not going to have to worry about the color match. It's going to finish correctly how you want it to. And it's just a really good way to fill cracks that's really unnoticeable to anyone who didn't know that they were there before. Here's a quick look from the final project of how good and how seamless this sawdust and wood glue trick works. You're going to want to sand off the excess glue from that trick because the glue is not going to allow the wood to take the finish evenly across the piece if it's still on there. So just take the time, sand it off, and that'll get you a nice, good end result. Anytime you're using plain straight cut wood that you're not rounding over or chamfering, you're going to want to break the edges with a piece of sandpaper. That's going to prevent some chipping, and it's also just going to be nicer to touch. And last but not least, obviously you got to apply the finish. I'm just using some polyurethane here. Polyurethane is going to be a nice durable finish, so it's going to withstand the abuse of keys and wallets and coins and all of that stuff, so it should stand up really well. I hope you enjoyed this week's project. If you did, please like the video, and if you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing.